Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's 2020. I am Kaystrings, and you're welcome to Better Music. Whew. These creamy KRAVINGS donuts, they are big donuts, imagine. What? Oh. Take it away, please. Better Music. Welcome back to Better Music, and today we'll be talking about compression. Compression happens to be one of the dynamic audio processes for audio engineering, music production. I'm sure you must have heard compression, add small compression, or you hear in Nigerian language where we say, compress the thing, make it compress them so that it go enter well. You know, it's compression. Yes, that's what they're trying to say. Well, some don't actually mean compression. What is compression? Compression is the process of reducing the dynamic range of an audio signal. Dynamic range, what do we mean by dynamic range? When we talk about dynamic range, we're saying the softest part of the music to the loudest part of the music. That is the dynamic range of your song. So, so the process of reducing that dynamic range is what is known as compression. Very simple and easy. You don't need to buzz your head over compressors and because a lot of music producers and sound engineers really avoid compression, which I did too for quite a lot of time. I really avoided compression. So I tend to just compress lightly and I say, I'm okay, you know, and then I follow the minus 3 dB rule and all that, you know. But now I don't do that because I know how to work a compressor. Type of compressors. There are so many types of compressor that we're going to be talking about. We have the opto compressor, we have the VCA compressors, we have the FET compressors, we have the PWM compressors, we have the diode compressors, we have vari-mu compressors. I think pretty much that's what you need to know. Opto will be optical, VCA will be voltage controlled amplifier. Of course, FETs are from transistors, and vari-mu tubes, the pulse wave modulator, I think pulse with modulators, yeah, that's what it's called. And then you have the diode, pretty much what you need to know. But before we talk about types of compressor, I would like to go back to talk about some parameters that are common with most compressors. You know, you'll need to know all of that. See ya. Threshold. Threshold. Does it sound familiar? All right, threshold happens to be it's a parameter on the compressor, and it's a level you set in which if it's exceeded, the compressor starts to apply an amount of gain reduction. So see threshold as your turn on and off. So if you want your compressor to kick in at so level, say minus 5 dB. If your threshold is at minus 5 dB, just note that as soon as your audio signal hits minus 5 dB, guess what? The compressor starts to work. And that is threshold. Ratio. Ratio actually says how much gain reduction the compressor applies to the audio signal. So remember, I said threshold is the level to which once it's exceeded, the compressor kicks in. It applies the gain reduction. And the ratio is actually how much of the gain reduction is the compressor applying to your audio signal. Fantastic. We're making it. Next, we're talking about attack. Ha! Attack. So, attack on a compressor is the time taken before the compressor starts compression. Meaning that your attack time can be either fast, medium, or slow. And then most of the time, producers and sound engineers often enjoy the sound of a fast attack on a percussion because it makes it sound smooth in your ears. It makes everything sound like the transients are all even. But guess what? When you use a fast attack, on a percussion instrument, which is soloed, um, it will sound good when it's soloed. But guess what? As soon as you return all of the other instruments into the sound, it feels weird. Your percussion start to sound a bit too far away from the other instrument. The same thing goes for drum. I love me good old drum. When I have a nice live recorded drums, and say you turn in a fast attack and you solo it, it's going to sound smooth, good, lovely. But as soon as you return it into the mix, no matter how much you drive up the volume, which is usually the makeup gain, you find out that there's something weird about this drum. It's just inside. I can't get it to pop out. I can't get it to cut through the mix. What's happening is that the attack actually is too fast, so compressor reduces all of the transient, all of the snappiness of your drums and then percussion instruments. So see your attack as attack controls the punch of your audio material or your source signal. So if you want it to be punchier, a slower attack might just be the answer. And then if you want it to be less punchier, a fast attack might just be the answer. Same thing goes for vocals. You want to smoothen the vocals up, you could use a fast attack. But guess what? At times, it just brings that, the gain reduction happens so fast that everything will begin to sound flat. There's no dynamic range. Hence, compression is reducing dynamic range. So, see you next for, that's release. Okay, release. See release as your aggression control knob or your aggression control. Release is actually what tells the compressor how long it should hold on to your signal before the signal returns back to unity gain. I mean, hold, compressor is holding, release. Compressor is holding, release. So this interaction between the compressor and your audio signal results in sort of aggression and smooth sounding signal. So it's back and forth. So a longer release or a higher release will tend to result into a smooth sounding signal, or your audio material is going to be smooth sounding. But a faster release, meaning it's going to release so fast, it results in a bit of aggression. A good example is if you try it on snare drums. If you have a long release on a snare drum, you almost can't hear the the cracking sound of the snare and the chain underneath. You almost can't hear it again because it's going to just smoothen everything. The sound is going to be, if it's thick, it's going to be thick, smooth sounding one. But as soon as you ease on the release knob, you realize that you can hear the chain, you can hear it buzz, you can hear the crack sound of that snare. So see your release as aggression control. Attack and release are one of the most important things for me on a compressor. See, some compressors don't necessarily have the threshold and all of that, but you can always set that by how much signal you pump into it, for some compressors anyway. But your attack and your release, they are very, very important. Remember, I said the attack controls how punchy or not punchy your audio signal is going to sound. Meanwhile, the release controls the aggression. Two different things. Attack, punch. Release, aggression. Output or gain. Most compressors have this knob. You'll see it written output or gain. All what that does is just to compensate for the reduction in the dynamic range or in the audio signal. That's what that compensates for. So if you've knocked down 5 dB from your compressor, by the time the signal hits your compressor and it's coming out, there's a gain reduction. So it's knocked out about, say, 5 dB. You use the output knob to compensate so that it matches the input and then the output. Pretty much that's what you need to know about that. Some compressors also have auto gain, meaning it will compensate it most of the time. It will compensate it by itself. It will calculate the input, how much the reduction is happening in the compression, and then it will compensate for it in the output. One of the parameters you also see is the dry-wet knob. Dry-wet knob just it's just a parallel mix situation where you can control how much of the compressed signal goes into the dry signal, just like a parallel. Consider you're doing a parallel compression. So is that I have all of this heavy compressed signal, I have this uncompressed signal. So I want more compressed that's wet, and then I want more uncompressed that's dry. So you could blend them in and do a parallel compression. So it said. From here moving forward, I'll be talking about some advanced stuff. Say like knee, like side chain. So knee is actually the transition between the uncompressed signal to the compressed signal. Uncompressed to the compressed signal. So the knee is the transition between that. That in turn affects the threshold. There's a bit of mathematical stuff going there. Some compressors have just hard knee, soft knee, medium knee, but some other compressors have theirs measured. You see them measured in dB. Example would be the one that comes with your stock, the stock plugin on Avid or Pro Tools. The Avid compressor has its knee measured in dB. What happens is this: if your compressor is set to say -24, the threshold of your compressor is set to -24. Threshold, remember I said, is the level to the compressor, which if it's exceeded, compression starts, gain reduction starts. So if it's 24, say if the signal level exceeds 24, compression is supposed to start. But if I adjust the knee of the compressor to be, say, 10, for example, it means that the compression is not going to really start at exactly 24. When the signal exceeds 24, it will be when the signal exceeds -24 plus then -10, say they're about -34. So it gently ease the compression into before you now have a full compression. So it ease the compression. That's the knee, just like your human knee. It bends it. So you can have a very hard knee, that is going to just, it makes the transient snappier. It makes the compression snappier, sorry. Or you can have a softer knee that just eases it into it, or you don't have knees at all, because some compressors don't have knees at all. Another one I'll be talking about is side chain. Side chain is one of my favorites. So side chain, one of my favorites. Have you ever seen two criminals handcuffed together? So one is handcuffed to his left hand, and then he's going to be cuffed to the other guy who is to his side, his own right hand. Meaning, if the right hand of the first criminal moves forward, is definitely going to drag in turn the second criminal. So the both of them have just been side chained. Now to compression. Side chain in compression is a kind of compression where the effect of the signal is controlled by another audio signal, or say a filtered version of that audio signal. Meaning the compressor will be activated, or the compressor will work based on the volume of another audio signal that is fed into it to turn it either on or off, or to say the amount of compression that will go in. Also, you can also do, there's another kind of side chain, which is, there are two types of side chain, by the way. There's the internal side chain, and then there's the external side chain. For the internal side chain, it is the filtered version of the same audio signal that triggers the compressor. I'll say that again. For internal side chain, the same audio signal that you're compressing is triggered by a filtered version of that audio signal. Too much work. I'll talk about that in details in our next class. We've talked about threshold, we've talked about ratio, we talked about attack and release, we've talked about knee, we've talked about side chain, we've talked about your gain, we've talked about the dry and wet mix. Most compressors will have all of this, some of this, or maybe just one or two of this, depending on the kind of compressors that it is. In our next class, I'll be talking about advanced settings on compressors, and I'll be talking a bit about type of compressors. Thanks for joining me this week. I am Kaystrings. It's Better Music. See ya next time.